Good morning and good afternoon to all our international participants joining us today, and welcome to Air Montréal's and Hamburg Aviation's second edition of our collaborative innovation webinar series, Mapping the Innovation Transformation. Close to 15 months ago, our industry suffered its largest setback.
Recording in progress.
Today, with cautious optimism, headwinds seem to be receding and a clearer trajectory out of this global pandemic seems to be upon us. From an industrial perspective, it is safe to say that throughout the crisis, there was a common beacon to follow out of this situation. Every aerospace nation agreed then, and still do today, that innovation is the right path to follow to come out of this crisis being more productive, more resilient, and more sustainable. I am proud to say that this webinar series is designed to not only keep this path open, but to actually widen it, to make it more inclusive for all companies, particularly SMEs, who have an interest, the passion, and the drive to better themselves and make a more positive impact on our exciting industry. Innovation can be done in many forms and be done in many different ways. Today's session is designed to shine a light on collaboration and the opportunity to be part of a bigger, more international drive for innovation transformation. Today's session will not only talk about a particular collaboration model, but the financial support that comes with it. We are honored and excited to welcome a representative from each of our country's renowned national innovation programs to present to you the opportunity to join in on the journey of transformative innovation. From Canada's National Research Council's Industrial Research Assistance Program, IRAP, Mr. Andrew Botter will be joined by Georg Nagel from Germany's Central Innovation Program for SMEs to walk us through the who, what, when, where, and how to take advantage of this fantastic opportunity. Before we meet these gentlemen and learn more about their program, I would like to offer the virtual podium to my illustrious partner from across the pond, Dr. Christian Scherhag from Hamburg Aviation, to say a few words and explain some of the technical details in order for you to get your important questions across and answered by our panelists during the Q&A session. Thank you all for your curiosity and interest in making your company and all of aerospace better. Christian, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Jared, for your welcoming remarks. Also from my side, a very warm welcome to all the participants from Germany and Canada. And I'm really happy that we could win Andrew and Georg here for our stage a couple of years ago. I've learned for the first time about IRAP program. I had to travel to Berlin at that time, and in those times we could take advantage of COVID-19 and have this information session completely online and virtual. This is one thing that we should keep, I think, in the future, and which is easier, more directly to implement for international cooperation. So I'm really, really happy that we have this session here today, and we have a perfect timing, as we will learn later on when you pitch your program. Let me add some technical aspects for our today's sessions, but I see everyone is already familiar with online webinars, so I had to say please turn off your camera, as everyone already did. So perfect, so that we can leave the floor to our speakers. And the second remark is please do not hesitate to put your questions in the chat. First we will collect every questions, and later on, after Andrew's and Georg's presentation, we will confront the two speakers with your questions. So I pass the ball to Andrew at first. Maybe you can also spend a few words to present your person a bit, and then the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Christian. I'm just going to take a moment, as we always do, to get my presentation up. Just one moment, please.
You can share your screen, and in a second I will also turn off my video.
All right, do you see my slides?
All good.
Good, perfect. Okay, bonjour, guten Tag, good morning, good afternoon to everybody in Canada and Germany. I'm really pleased to be here to present to this very unique collaboration of clusters in both Canada and Germany. Be nice someday to present in person to everyone in either Montreal or Hamburg, but this will do for now. So I'll be presenting about the National Research Council, specifically our Industrial Research Assistance Program, how we work with companies in Canada. I'll be talking a bit about what we're doing internationally, and specifically with Germany, including with the ZIM program that my colleague Georg Nagel will talk more about after me. So with that, and again, to introduce myself, I'm with Industrial Research Assistance Program, IRAP in Canada. I'm an industrial technology advisor. I'm based in the Toronto area, but my main role is as part of our international team in IRAP. I focus on Germany. I'm our national coordinator for our programs with Germany. And as you'll see in the presentation, we're doing a lot with Germany. It's a very important country for Canada and the NRC and IRAP to work with. So just a brief introduction of the National Research Council. It's Canada's largest research technology organization. We've been in existence for more than 100 years, and we have facilities across the country. The NRC has a few different mandates. We focus on advancing knowledge through our research institutions, all of our facilities with scientists and engineers. We provide policy solutions for government, and we have a big focus on business innovation, especially through the Industrial Research Assistance Program, which I'll be focusing on. So we're located across the country, more than 2,000 scientists and engineers, a few hundred people working for the IRAP program. And I should also mention we opened our first overseas office ever in Munich a couple of years ago. So we have NRC employees within the Consulate of Canada in Munich. So we have an NRC office there. Dr. Jennifer Decker, NRC's representative in Germany, is leading that. She's focusing more on the NRC collaborations with German partners, and I work with her more on the IRAP side, focusing on SMEs. Again, I'm in Toronto. So moving on to IRAP, as we're known in Canada, our focus is purely on helping small and medium-sized companies grow. And for us, those are companies under 500 people in Canada. Looking at some statistics from a couple of years ago, we need to update this, especially post-pandemic. We invest roughly $300 million a year in Canadian SMEs, and actually that was recently increased significantly through the federal budget in Canada. We work with, again, well over 8,000 companies, and we fund well more than 3,000 companies at any given time. And we do this through a network of technology advisors, more than 250 advisors. We provide advisory service and financial assistance to SMEs. The core of the IRAP program are the network of industrial technology advisors. We're actually at about 270 advisors now across the country. These advisors come with private sector experience, usually management and technical experience. And we cover a broad range of technologies with our advisors, everything from aerospace to biotechnology to agri-technology, software, you name it. We're covered in the 270 or more advisors that we have. And a key aspect of those advisors is when there's no pandemic, we visit the companies in person. And we get to know the companies, their facilities, by visiting them. Of course, these days it's virtual, but hopefully we'll be back to in-person visits soon. So the advisors work with the companies for over the long period, provide a lot of technical, a lot of business advice. We refer our clients to other programs in Canada, universities, other government programs, federal and provincial. incubators, all sorts of anywhere where we can leverage advice for the companies, we'll try to use that. We do a lot of linkages as well with other organizations, including more and more internationally. So our model is basically, first and foremost, is the advisory service. Through the technology advisor, again, we provide the business and technical advice, introductions, and expertise. And then we can also provide funding through mainly research and development projects. Also, we provide funding to hire young employees out of universities. And more and more, we're providing funding for international collaborative projects, which is the focus of my presentation. When we look at who we can select in terms of Canadian companies, they have to be incorporated in Canada, and they have to be less than 500 employees. That's our mandate. And then we also want to make sure that those companies have a goal to grow through innovation. We really can only focus on companies that are growing. And when we look at the business opportunity, we really want to make sure that the company has management in place to take advantage of the funding that we provide. They have the financial capabilities to pay for their share of the projects. Again, they have the management and expertise to exploit the technologies once they're developed. And then when we look at the project, of course, we do a due diligence on the project plan, the technologies, the challenges, how they're going to address the top challenges, the risks. We look at the team in place in the company and who they may need to hire for the project. And then, of course, we look at the impact on Canada from the project. And our main focus is on how will the company grow to hire more people and grow in Canada. So to summarize, we really focus on companies that are growing, and those come from across sectors, even the agri-technology sector, as you see in this photo here. So when we look at the various sectors, IRAP doesn't pick and choose sectors. We help all companies in all sectors as long as they have a good opportunity to grow through technological innovation. So you see in this graph here, obviously, information communication technologies, digital economy, that dominates these days, and really it touches on every sector, as everyone knows. There's a sensor in pretty much every product that's produced these days. But we cover all sorts of other sectors. You can see aerospace. It's likely underrepresented in this graph because, again, if a company is working on piece of software for aerospace, it probably gets counted as digital economy. Or if it's an advanced material for aerospace, it may get counted as manufacturing materials. When we look at the size of the companies, again, we focus on companies under 500 people. We help a lot of small companies under 10 people. But for the international projects, which I'll be talking more about, we're looking at companies that are a little larger, usually more than about 15 people and larger, who can really work internationally and collaborate with partners from other parts of the world, including Germany. So we are doing more and more internationally in IRAP. We have a team in place across the country to help with international programs, including providing advice of which programs are best fit, and then working with other countries to develop programs for Canadians to work with companies and organizations in other countries. So if you look at the world, we blue countries we work closely with. This is the Global Affairs Program, Global Affairs Canada, called Canadian International Innovation Program. Includes Brazil, India, China, South Korea, Israel. And then the green countries are a member of Eureka, which is a platform I'll talk a little bit more about. It's mainly European-based, Canada member. So it includes pretty much every country in Europe, including Germany. And then we have special bilateral programs, including with Germany, both within Eureka and outside of Eureka. So we do a lot with Germany, actually more than any other country. And we do a fair amount with the UK and Japan as well, bilaterally. So we work with Germany through a number of different programs. One of them is Eureka, and this is a platform. It's been around for decades in Europe, and Canada joined about 10 years ago. And it's a way for countries to work together to co-fund innovation. They have a number of different ways to fund projects through Eureka. One is Eurostars. This is a competitive call for proposals, usually twice a year, where applicants from Eureka countries, including Canada, including Germany, that could be partners in other countries, can apply for Eurostars projects. The next Eurostars call has not been launched yet. It'll probably be launched this summer, and proposals will probably be due in October for projects to start the following spring. Eurostars covers all technologies except military. So aerospace would be included as long as it wasn't a military-focused project. And then just to mention, so Eurostars, like most of our programs, the SME, no matter what country it's comes from, has to be the leader of the project. Sometimes they include universities, larger companies, institutions as well. Another way we work with Eureka is through the clusters. I won't talk too much about these, but people can contact me if they want to know more. The clusters are focused on specific sectors, including software, telecommunications, microelectronics. And these projects usually have more than 20 participants in them. They take a longer time to plan, which is understandable given the size of them, and they're usually about 3 years in length. But we do participate in the Eureka cluster calls, and happy to discuss more with anyone who wants to know about them. And then we have our bilateral programs with Germany, and we have a couple of them. One is we work through the German Ministry for Research and Education, known as BMBF. We've had a couple of strategic calls with BMBF over the last few years. In 2018, we had a call for proposals focused on Industry 4.0, digitalization for manufacturing. I'm sure everyone on this call is familiar with. And these projects, we call them 2+2 because they include a Canadian SME, a Canadian university, a German SME, and a German university or research institute. So it's 2+2 from either country or more. And those projects were funded by IRAP, funding the Canadian companies, NSERC, which is the university funding agency in Canada, and of course BMBF in Germany. And then in 2020, last year, we launched another call. This one we called 3+2, same sort of idea, except the projects had to also include NRC researchers, so that some of the scientists and engineers from the NRC side had to be in each project. And the universities in Canada were funded by the National Research Council this time through our challenge programs. That call was focused on AI for advanced manufacturing. And then we'll probably have another call with BMBF in the near future, I would say probably within a year. Again, focused on another strategic area, which is under discussion. So then finally, we have a very successful program with ZIM, which is under the German Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, known as BMWI. We have a partnership with BMWI. We've had 8 calls for proposals. Actually, the 9th was just launched. Via those 8 calls since 2017, we've funded many projects between Canadian and German companies in many different sectors, including some that have touched on aerospace. The 9th call for proposals was launched in April, and those projects are expected to start in the spring of 2022. So the IRAP ZIM calls, really like all of our international calls, we're looking for joint international projects that are innovative and developing new products, processes, and technologies. All technologies in the ZIM call are open for us to consider funding, except we will not fund projects focused specifically on military through the international calls. So as long as the technology is outside of military, it's eligible. And the projects have to have a strong market potential. We want both Germany and Canada want to see commercialization from the projects, usually within a couple of years after the project ends. Project should have an obvious advantage for the two or more companies to work together. Should be a synergy from working together. And on both sides, it's under 500 employees. On the German side, as Georg will explain, ZIM can support German institutions if German SMEs are involved. On the Canadian side, IRAP cannot support institutions directly. We only have a mandate to fund SMEs. So institutions can be involved, but they'd have to bring their own funding or apply separately for other funding on the Canadian side. And these projects are generally about 2 years in length. So the current call, as I said, was launched in April. It's up on both the IRAP and ZIM websites. The expression of interest deadline is September 24th this year. And I have to stress that as a Canadian requirement. ZIM doesn't have such a requirement. But in Canada, IRAP wants all of our proposals to go through an expression of interest, and we do that just to make sure the Canadian company is a fit for the call and for IRAP funding before inviting them to proceed to a full international proposal with their partners in Germany. And I want to stress that companies can submit the expression of interest to IRAP at any time before September 24th. In fact, we will review them fairly quickly once they're submitted to make a decision fairly quickly whether they can proceed. So if anyone has a partner they want to work with, I highly suggest submit it earlier so you have more certainty of whether you can proceed and you have more time to work on your international proposal. That international proposal will be due December 15th in both Canada and Germany. You'd be submitting it. The Canadians would submit to IRAP. The Germans would submit to ZIM. And those projects will be reviewed by both IRAP and ZIM over the January-February period, and they'll be notified which ones have been successful to proceed. And those projects would start in the spring of 2022. So that concludes my presentation. There's my email. I'm sure you can get it through Montreal Aero or Hamburg Aviation as well, and happy to take questions later. So with that, I will turn it over to Georg. Just have to stop sharing here. And yes, Georg, please feel free to take over.
Thanks, Andrew, for this wonderful presentation as usual. This is a known setup. We've done this multiple times before, so I'm always pleased to take the second presentation because most of what's been said applies to our collaboration. But I would like to stress that our programs are very much alike. So you'll hear some details about the German side now, but the general setup and the general requirements we have are basically aligned, and the programs really fit to each other. So let me quickly share my presentation here, which is this one. And you should see my presentation now.
Yes.
Once again, thanks to Gerard and Christian for this kind introduction at the beginning, and again, thanks a lot for your kind organization together with your team, and for giving us the chance to present here today, and to the participants on how this joint funding initiative between Canada and Germany works out. My name is visible here. I'm working for AIF Project Management, so I'm not really employed at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy in Germany. This is a general setup you'll find here in Germany, as most of the funding, or actually all funding programs offered by the federal states or the provinces, the federal state and provinces, are then given to so-called project management agencies, and these are so-called one-stop shops or one-stop agencies to really deliver the program from first consultations and public affairs like we do here, going through the whole application and evaluation process, the reimbursement of funds, and the final assessment of projects and closing. All that is done by the various project management agencies in Germany, and we as AIF Project Management are one of those. And I'm employed with AIF for, a bit more than 12 years now. I have a business background, started here as a business advisor, and now for a couple of years I'm responsible for the international collaborations. This brings me to another point that I always like to highlight here. We are always talking about independent national funding bodies. So the ZIM program, the Central Innovation Program for SMEs in Germany, and NRC's IRAP, the Industrial Research and Assistance Program, are national funding programs that only support the national entities, companies, research and technology organizations. So make sure to keep that in mind, that we from the German side will never ever finance a Canadian partner and vice versa. And through this joint mechanism of aligned funding programs and then the parallel application and evaluation processes, we offer you the chance to come around with a joint transnational or cross-border project that will receive funding from the national instruments. So now let me jump into my presentation. First of all, I would like to give you a short, brief overview of where we are and where this funding program, the Central Innovation Program, is located in the midst of several funding programs and options offered by the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy in Germany. We gathered all that in a chain of programs, starting from an idea, then building your competencies, working on a pre-competitive level, and then going closer to the market, actually going into the market with your innovation. You see all these programs here. It goes from the idea to market success, and all these programs are run by the ministry. And at the very right blue side, you see the Central Innovation Program. And this is there because it's the closest to the market you could get with BMWI's funding. And it is really about developing a prototype, a market-ready product that you can put to the market, that you can really distribute once funding is expired and your innovation is done. So the program itself has several advantages. Let me start at a point that we, as the project management agency, have been working with the ministry for more than 25 years now, and we've been delivering these programs like the ZIM program for this amount of time, and with predecessor programs with different names. We've been offering the German Mittelstand, the SMEs in Germany, this kind of funding for quite some time. Budgets have been increasing year by year. When I started 12 years ago, it was half the size, and nowadays, this year, we actually have an annual funding budget for the ZIM program, which accumulates to 635 million euros that goes into the market, that goes to the beneficiaries, the SMEs, the RTOs, the universities that apply for funding here. So with that, it is by far the largest program for supporting the innovative SMEs in Germany. And as Andrew mentioned earlier, it is open to all technologies, topics, and branches. So we see a pure bottom-up approach. We want you to come around with your innovations, with your ideas, with your projects, and we try not to limit you in any way. And this has been one of the key successes of the program ever since, that SMEs tell us where they come from, where they want to go to, and we try to support them with our evaluations and in a positive aspect with the funding. It is a very unbureaucratic approach. We have very slim application decks. It is not much paperwork you have to do. I mean, there's paperwork involved. It is impossible to do without, but compared to other programs, we try to keep that very low. Quick decision processes make the program very attractive. So within approximately 3 months on a national level, approximately 4.5 months on an international level, once the application has reached us, we try to have decisions ready and try to communicate them. Another key advantage of the program is the continuous application submission. So on a national level, it is possible to submit applications at any time of the year without any pre-consultation, without handing in any project sketch or whatsoever. You can come around with an application. This is possible, but not recommended all the time. So for applicants that have been with us, that have received funding before, that are known to the program, this is possible and absolutely right to do. But for companies and beneficiaries that have not with the program before, we highly recommend to talk to us before, to consult with us, to hand in a project sketch, and to grab as much information as possible from the project management agencies connected to the program. This is free of charge, and we're always happy to have you here and to consult with you. Then talking about the program itself, on a national level, we have so-called 3 main pillars of the program: the individual projects, the cooperation projects, and the innovation networks. This presentation focuses mostly on the cooperation projects. This was the first pillar of the program that we opened up for international collaborations and for partnerships with other innovation programs worldwide. The innovation networks are open to international collaboration too. So ever since 2018, it was possible to include international partners in these networks as well. But as I understand, we want to see cooperation projects between companies here. And so for that, my presentation is more specifically focused on the cooperation projects. Talking about international cooperation, we obviously want to see international collaboration to grow within international networks and R&D projects, so the cooperation projects. So for that reason, BMWI and other partners have established this means of collaboration to really open up the national funding bodies to enable collaborations with international partners and to have cross-border knowledge transfer and to really exchange ideas, solutions on international markets, because we know, and our ministry and we are basically, I think we are convinced that some innovations, some ideas are just not there in Germany, and you need to go to other countries that are more specified in certain markets and where you find better solutions and better applications to really fit your idea and to make that an innovation. So the intensification of international know-how transfer, new trade relations and markets, that was the clear intention of BMWI to implement these international cooperations within the program. And in order to really give an incentive to the companies, to the SMEs applying here, we have some improved funding conditions for the cooperation projects and the innovation networks. One is, and that's the key advantage, is an increased funding rate. Once you have an international partner on board, your funding rate may increase by a maximum of 10%, limited by the maximum funding, the funding rate of 60% we offer to the German companies, the SMEs. then these joint, these synchronized funding possibilities, such as with NRC IRAP, is really a good instrument, and it makes it easier for companies, for RTOs to apply, because they know that funding is settled in the background and that they have the chance to apply in both countries, and that in a positive case, with a positive evaluation, funding will be secured for both sides. The fast decision-making process on an international level is to mention as well, and the possibility nowadays to really initiate cooperation projects through international innovation networks is an advantage too. So together with Canada, we started our collaboration in 2016. As Andrew mentioned, with an MOU signed back then, it was possible to align the two programs, IRAP and ZIM, and to offer, well, usually 2 calls a year for joint funding, and that's what we do with the 9th call this year. There's provincial funding, especially here from the Alberta government, that's been possible to connect with ZIM on the German side ever since 2012. And within the bilateral evaluations, we are able to then support your ideas, your innovations, your projects through the national funding programs. This is all synchronized, and when funding, the national fundings get accepted, you will receive your money for your individual part of the project. So purely talking about the German side, I would like to go into detail who is eligible for funding. So are you eligible to apply here? This applies once you are a small, medium-sized company with your business location in Germany. You have to have your company foundation completed, and your company must be able to pay the own share of the project. So as I mentioned earlier, a maximum of 60% funding rate goes to each company applying here. So a minimum of 40% needs to come from your end, and you need to be able to prove that with your financial statements. As well, you have to have sufficient qualified personnel. Scientific and technical personnel applies here, and you need to take proof that this personnel will work on the project and will benefit to the innovation you're planning. The project criteria were mentioned before, and I highlight that again. It needs to be a new innovative product, process, or technical service. So something new in itself, or combination of existing ideas that make up something new, will be eligible for funding once the application has passed the evaluation process. So the R&D within the project needs to exceed the international state of the art, and most importantly, we look at the technical risk that's involved in each project. So really make sure to highlight the technical risk that you have within your project, within your consortia, and to describe that well in your application, because that's what our evaluators look for, and that's what they need to see and need to have described in order to make a good funding or positive funding decision. Last but not least, good market opportunities have to be visible and clearly described. So we want to have at least a page description of how you want to put your innovation to the market afterwards. So what in specific is eligible within a project? So for the R&D side of company, you need to have your own personnel costs described in the application. Project-related contracts of third parties may be included. These can go up to a maximum of 25% of the calculated personnel. R&D contracts to external academic partners can be included, temporary staff can be included, and on top of all this, you get so-called other costs. It's a flat rate of costs we simply assume you have with the project. For the research institutes, the personnel project-related contracts are eligible, and then the other costs as well. This is for who gets funding. It's about the SMEs and the different sizes. That's not so important here, but this slide is important again. The funding rates you really get. So research institutes at the bottom always receive 100%, but for the SMEs applying for funding, it varies between 25 and 60%. Really relating to your company size, your company location, and international partner involved or not. So that's something you have to calculate yourself, and that's the funding rate you can apply in your application. As I mentioned earlier, international innovation networks are another part of the program. They support a network of companies and RTOs to actually create ideas, to really create a technological roadmap. Here only a network manager is will receive funding, will receive money within a project, and the pure idea is to really leverage international R&D, so-called cooperation projects, out of these networks, and to then apply for network funding, for cooperation funding. So having that said, I come to the end of my presentation here. For more information, I mentioned earlier, please feel free to contact us at any point. Our consultation is free of charge, and the project management agencies connected to the program are always happy to support you with your individual questions and with project sketches you may submit. All the information you have heard here or seen here is visible on our website too, and we offer other webinars. And with that, I'm looking forward to your questions. If you have any afterwards, please feel free to drop us an email on this general email address or on mine, which will probably be distributed by the organizers. And that's it. And thanks for your participation.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Much appreciated. We already do have a question popping up, and I have one for myself as well, but I'll start with Ryan's question, where he was explaining that he already has a project that involves a Canadian element, a German element, but also a British element. Now, would that be a recipe for a project that would be considered within what you were discussing today, having those three elements?
Is Ryan from Canada or Germany?
I think he is from Canada.
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, with it's great to have three countries involved: Canada, Germany, UK. There's a couple of ways I think he could do that, and I want to actually hear Georg's response too. I think he could still submit a proposal to the IRAP ZIM call if it's focused on the Canadian and German applicants, since obviously that call doesn't include the UK. There's nothing wrong with mentioning the UK component, but we would be really looking at the Canadian and German applicants for funding. So that's one way. The other way is he could consider applying for the next Eurostars call. UK, Canada, and Germany are part of that call.
Okay.
And many of the Eurostars projects, or most of them actually, have multi-countries involved. So there's two ways, and I'd be happy to discuss more with the Canadian company in terms of strategy. Georg, do you want to comment on your thoughts?
Basically, my answer aligns with yours, and just highlighting that from ZIM's perspective, from the German funding program ZIM, we have no issues having more partners than 2 involved and more countries involved. It would be up to the UK partners to then decide on whether they would self-finance their share of the project, or if they would seek for funding through Innovate UK and make that possible. Both chances are there, and we don't limit that.
Yeah, I guess just to summarize, so the IRAP-Zim call, it would be IRAP and Zim looking at whether we can fund the Canadian and German partners, and the UK would be separate from that. They would be they'd either bring their own funding or look for their own funding outside of it. If they apply through Eurostars, the Eurostars process consults all the countries involved and decides whether the 3 countries would be funding. Again, whether it would have to figure out whether they're all eligible. So okay.
Yeah, I think that seems like it answered his question. So thank you for that. Maybe just a quick question on my side. The NRC and Zim provide matchmaking type of opportunities to not a lot of SMEs maybe have that international outreach and understand what is maybe going on the other side of the water. Is there a model or a tool that would help understand and help the companies know what's going on the other side to see if there's potential for collaboration?
Georg, do you want to start, or should I? It's up to you.
Go for it, Andrew.
Yeah, okay. So the short answer is, once a call is launched, as it is now, there's not a huge amount of time to find partners, although this is a pretty, we've got a fairly long window for applicants this time.
September.
Yeah, so there's still time. IRAP and Zim, we don't run matchmaking services together. It's just not feasible for us to find partners. Having said that, there are other organizations that can help, including our trade commissioners, the Canadian trade commissioners in Germany, including possibly, depending on where the company is, I'm guessing it's in Quebec. Quebec has an office, its own sort of consulate in Munich that might be able to help. And also there's something called the Enterprise Europe Network. This is a network really to provide matchmaking. Many offices in Europe, and more recently an office has started in Canada. It's in Alberta, and I think they're starting to cover Quebec, but they would definitely work with partners in Europe and Germany to provide matchmaking. So there's a number of different ways, but it's not a formal service provided by IRAP and Zim. Having said that, the Canadian company can contact me and we can look at, I can provide more advice. Georg, do you want to add anything to that?
Totally fine.
We could also take this challenge because clusters can also provide matchmaking at some points. At least we provide platforms. We have different formats like conferences, but sometimes also really pure 100% matchmaking events. So this is good to hear. There's still room for us. I have another question as well, if I may. So your program is very strong because you have 2 major selling points that are very important for SMEs, at least that we were told in the last years. First, it is that the timeline is aligned, so the deadlines are the same in Canada and in Germany. And then also, maybe you can spend a few words on the application form. So our SMEs are always keen to save time and money. And I've already checked the program a little bit more in detail. So there's one application submission form, but on the Canadian side, there's a two-step approach. On the German side, it's a one-step. So maybe you can spend a few words more on it, and maybe also sell it a bit to our audience, because I know that at least German and also Canadian SMEs are listening.
Yeah, I'll start if you don't mind. So it is we make the final decisions together, but which ones will be funded through the call. But the process is slightly different. I think the main difference is the way IRAP works with Canadians is we do everything in steps, and we do this not to create more paperwork. Our view is it's to decide early with the Canadian SME whether they're eligible or not. It's just the way our program works in general, not even just international. With everything, we don't want the Canadian filling out too much paperwork if we think they're not eligible. So the way we do it in Canada is they start by registering for the call. The registration's on the call link. By registering, it's just really providing really next to nothing, the name of the company really. We'll figure out whether they already have an advisor in Canada. If they don't, we will connect them with somebody who can, it's an intake service into IRAP. It's very quick. After the registration, assuming we proceed, there's an expression of interest form. It's quite short. It shouldn't take more than 15 minutes for a Canadian company to fill it out. That's submitted to IRAP, and that's the deadline of September 24th, although I encourage anyone to submit it earlier. And that'll be reviewed quickly by IRAP and decide whether the company should proceed to an international proposal. And the international proposal is a very, it's actually, we use the ZIM template, the English version of it. So that document is the same between the two countries that outlines the collaboration. And then separately from that, Gabe may want to mention, ZIM may ask other questions, and then IRAP will also ask for some more documents later on if the project is deemed to be fundable. We would ask for more details after we decide that it should be proceed. So it's a bit different on either side, but we try to do it on a stepwise basis in Canada, just not to overwhelm the Canadian with too much initially. And we guide them through the process. Georg, do you want to mention or comment on the German side?
Yeah, generally speaking, and I mentioned that before, we are using a national funding approach to be open or as open for international collaboration as possible. But we do not design any application documents specifically for international partners. So the real ZIM application is always the same. So there's only one application document for the German partners, the ZIM application file, and this is generally the same for all entities and all SMEs, RTOs, universities applying here. So we have to have that in a certain way. And as our ministry decided to have the program, well, with a one-step approach, you can just fill in an application anytime. This needs to be relatively comprehensive. So we ask for quite some details, but still compared to other programs, it is manageable and possible for companies, even small companies, even unexperienced companies in terms of innovation funding to cope with that. Additionally, we have the mentioned proposal application form that we use together with Andrew and with IRAP. But this is only for us an overview document that then gives us an insight of what the Canadian partners will contribute to the project, and that we see who is involved and what's the project share and the person months involved and a little description on what the Canadian partners will do, as we don't really see the Canadian application documents or the review process. So this is done individually, and the Canadians take care of their side, we take care of our side. And at the end, we align the results and see who's eligible for joint funding.
Yeah, I guess, to summarize it, the documents are different on either side, and the internal processes are different because we have different programs beyond just international in each country. what we try to do is align the decision points together, so it's clear for the applicants in both countries whether to proceed.
Okay. We have about 4 minutes left. I'd like to squeeze in maybe a brief two-part funding question to you, Andrew. Georg mentioned that on the ZIM side, there's about 60% public funding for the innovation projects, and he iterated what expenses are covered. And I was wondering, is it the same for Canada on the percentage and what is being covered as for the expenses?
Yeah,
is there a maximum?
Sure.
And lastly, there was an interesting thing you mentioned about the innovation being commercialized within a 2 to 3 year time frame. Is any funding withheld if that technology, service, or product is not actually go to market within that time frame?
Yeah. So to answer the last question first, no, we wouldn't withhold any funding. The way IRAP works in general, not just with Germany, everything how IRAP works is it's a contribution. If a company is successful, the funding is provided usually on a monthly basis towards costs that the company claims. Now, there's an agreement. The company has to agree to, try to exploit benefits for Canada, and in the proposal process, we want to be confident that the company is going to commercialize within a few years. It depends on the technology, of course. It's not a hard deadline. So it's more about the due diligence where we want to make sure that they're going to commercialize. In terms of the numbers, the maximum contribution that IRAP can provide to a Canadian company through this call is $500,000 over the 2 years. That's the cash that we're providing to the company, understanding that generally speaking, we're providing about half of the cost for the company when you look at labor and overhead. And the formula that IRAP generally uses in terms of what we cover is really what we cover for the most part is labor and sometimes some contractors in Canada. And in labor, it's what we tell companies, it's up to 80% of their labor costs. We stress up to because we have the ability to lower it a bit depending on the situation, but up to 80% of their labor costs, up to 50% of their contractor costs. So basically, we're contributing to the expertise in the project, and of course, the company is contributing to some of those costs as well, including the overhead and materials, equipment. We also contribute to some of the travel costs, which is usually a smaller part of the project, but we do cover some travel costs for companies to go to Germany and meet with their partners, assuming they're able to get on a plane, there's no pandemic. So that's the IRAP side. I think that's what you were looking for. It was just the Canadian side, right?
Yes, I wanted that clarification.
Yeah. And I can provide details to anyone if they want to contact me.
Okay. I'll also invite everyone who's still on the line that if questions do come up at a later period, please don't hesitate to contact us at Air Montréal or Hamburg Aviation, and we'll get you the answers to your questions through direct messaging and share that with you. Christian, do you have any other last minute questions before we sign off?
Yeah. Maybe one very last question, looking at the time. Andrew, one question. You showed one slide where digitalization projects or projects related to ICT were or had a much higher success rate. One could conclude. I know it's difficult with correlation and causality, but very simple in simple words. It could be obvious that innovation was taking place in the last years in the field of digitalization. Do you expect a shift to sustainability or greener topics in the upcoming years, or is that something that you have maybe already talked about on your level, that this is more and more important to evaluate innovation projects?
I wouldn't want to predict anything, and we are open to all sectors. I think what you're seeing in that the large portion of the ICT or basically software side of things is it's being reflected of what we're seeing in the economy. Those are the most, in terms of numbers, the most innovative companies. or the projects themselves have a software ICT side, because it's, as I said, embedded in everything these days. If you look at, I'm just speaking as someone who reads the news, and if you look at the way the world's going, sustainability, greener technologies are becoming more popular. So I would hazard a guess, yes, we'd see more and more projects with a greener and more sustainable technologies, because again, that's just the way the economies are going in both countries. And maybe we should start counting those somehow, because I don't think it's just clean technology. It's like ICT. You see it in everything. And I think more sustainable technologies you're going to start to see in everything as well, no matter what the sector.
Okay, thank you. So Jared, should
Yes,
we conclude?
I think that was great. Thank you so much, both of you gentlemen, for your participation and sharing with that. We look forward to maybe hearing from some of our aerospace members in Quebec or even across Canada to reach out and connect with you and start to see that aerospace chart grow a little bit more on successful innovation projects with your organizations. So thank you again to all the participants also who have joined. Again, Christian and myself remain available to receive any of your questions, and this webinar series has been recorded and will be shared with you. And if you can just take a moment to fill out the survey, that would be very helpful for preparing for the next episodes that we will be bringing forward to you. So understanding what your preferences are will help us bring the right information to you and create the right opportunities for you and your organizations. So thank you again on behalf of Air Montréal and Hamburg Aviation. We'd like to wish you a great week, and we look forward to seeing you at our next episode. So please stay tuned and look for our mention of it.
Okay. Thanks to everyone. Merci. Danke.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Recording
Also
stopped.
from Hamburg Aviation. Talk to you soon.